Moin. Ah, and suddenly the microphone is on. Great. Thank you very much. So I'm welcoming you with a great moin from my natural hometown of Hamburg. Good morning, everyone. And I'm so happy to see you here, that you are the guys that want to talk about policy in the early morning hours. And thank you very much for making it here. Well, some of you have been in the council yesterday, so you already heard a bit about the process. But today we actually want to dive a bit into the content. Now we have the luxury problem that so many people love to debate with our candidates, so we're a bit 15 minutes short, and we actually have to end at 10:30 sharp for the official opening of the Congress. So I'm going to quickly walk you a bit through the timeline of the manifesto, the content we're aiming at, the process, and I'm very happy that we have the chairs of our working groups here for the different topics. They're going to engage a bit with you on the content, and then we want to make sure that we have as much time as possible to get engaged with you and to hear from you, because this is what the session is meant about. So in case you don't know me, my name is Svenja Hahn. I'm a vice president of the ALDE Party. I'm also a member of the European Parliament, and it's my great honor and duty, and sometimes I can tell you it's not a fun thing to do, working on the manifesto, but we're going to do that so we liberals are ready for the European elections to give answers to the challenges that people care about. So, the timeline. Very quick walkthrough. You heard it at our last meetings. We started actually very early. We started in September by setting together our committee. We're representative, 20 people from all over Europe. We're quite gender balanced, regional balanced, so we're a very, very diverse bunch of people. We did hearings. We did questionnaires with our member parties to figure out priorities. We did questionnaires with citizens to see where priorities are. We took all that feedback together to define priorities. And then we started expert meetings in the beginning of the year. We had expert hearings to hear from civil society representatives, to hear from companies, to hear from policy and lawmakers, to bring all that together. Currently, we're in the phase of bringing that together, so we have identified challenges that we want to give answers to. As liberals, we're having this session today, and as a next step, we're also further engaging with member parties, and we're organizing town hall meetings with citizens all over Europe. For example, here in Sweden, but also in Denmark, we're planning one in Germany, my country, for example, but also Bulgaria. So we're planning a lot of them all over the summer and autumn. And then we're planning to bring all that input together and send a draft in the autumn, end of September, October, to our member parties and have it adopted as at the extraordinary Congress to get ready for the elections. So you know a bit about the timeline. So let's look into how we're going to do that. And FDP people around here will certainly notice that, because I introduced the modular system that we have for our election program. And you know what is the nice thing about that? We don't want to bore citizens. No one reads manifestos today, but they should. So we should make it attractive for them to read it. So we actually brought this system and adapted it for the ALDE style. So we're making it very short, very sweet, and kind of like the style of a tweet. So we can use it for campaigning, we can use it for social media, and we can narrow it down for people to have the content they want and find easily the answers they want, because they have questions and we should give them the answers as easy as possible. So, what is the content that we identified? We identified the main challenges, and we talked it into 3 narrative topics. Well, I mean, we're not having a sexy title just yet, but, you know, it's about the content, and the marketing comes later. So our first topic will be about the hard facts. This is what people care about, how they're going to pay the bills at the end of the month. So we're going to talk about the future of the single market. We're going to talk about economic opportunities and sustainability. Because for us liberals, it's not about a weird degrowth theory. It's about responsible growth and how can we have, as a market, responsibility for the future also of the environment. So we're going to address climate change and biodiversity loss. We're going to see how can we further move the digital transition, and how can we address the changes in the labor market arising from many new opportunities and challenges, and also how can we push forward a more free trade agenda, because that really is the engine to get us out of this economic crisis. The second topic we're going to look into is the EU internal affairs and also the rule of law, because this is something we should not forget, with all the crises on our doorsteps, the crisis within our union. So how can we guarantee freedoms to individuals, women, LGBTIQ people? How can we strengthen EU democracy and combat corruption? And also reform of asylum system and migration system. And on the third level, we're going to look into a global multipolar world. We see that the fight of our time is autocracy versus democracy. And what role will the European Union take on the world stage in this? How can we strengthen democracy in the world? So, those are the three narratives that we're going to look in, and we're actually having the chairs of these working groups with us. They're here to give you a little bit more input, but I quickly wanted to present you to give an idea of the challenges that we identified so far in these areas. For example, on a first topic, when we look into digital transitions, how can we incentivize investment? How can we make it attractive? We had the debate yesterday with Vestager and Jourova that Europe is very strong on regulating, but how can we ensure that innovation actually happens here in the European Union? How can we finalize the digital single market? And also, how do we find a good balance for intellectual property rights and ensure privacy of citizens? How do we address climate change? So what do we need to reform? How can we make it more attractive for businesses? How can we ease the burden on citizens in this change process? And how do we ensure that we have affordable energy for all of those projects? And then, of course, how do we build a competitive environment for businesses and citizens to thrive in? You know, the famous red tape, and I can tell you it's a real thing. Since I started in the parliament in 2019, adding red tape is something people really like to do. So how are we going to cut that down? And this is to give you an idea of a glimpse of the challenge that we have, and I would like to hear about you from later, what you think about those things. And also, like the questions of trade, how can we push that forward? How can we address the labor market situation? This is also something that will be very defining for the European Union. Are we going to have enough skilled labor? Quick deep dive into the second topic, and again, I'm very sorry for rushing a bit through this, but it's to give you a glimpse and that we actually have time to get into a dialogue. In this era, we have identified a few big topics with questions under it. For example, safeguarding individual freedom. Women's rights are under attack. We just ratified in the European Parliament the Istanbul Convention for violence, protection against violence against women. How do we ensure that LGBTIQ plus people feel safe in the European Union? How do we keep on strengthening the rule of law, as we had yesterday from Vice President Jourova? How do we combat corruption? That's a big problem still in many of our member states, and it's a problem, therefore, for the whole of the European Union. How do we look into the rule of law and funding? It's about cohesion policy. How are we going to strengthen the EU? How do we address questions about legitimacy of the European institutions? And also, how are we going to look into asylum and migration? Because those are situations that people want answers for and the Union to act. And on our third topic, we have also, you guessed it, identified challenges, and those are the things we want to look into. The EU's role in the world. How do we cooperate with like-minded countries? The Alliance of Democracies. How are we going to build it? What about the Trans-Pacific Partnership? And China, the elephant in the room. How are we going to address them? But also talking about, for example, foreign aid. How are we going to use that in a way to help strengthen our values? Defense and security. When I was campaigning in 2019, my party was campaigning on a European army, and people were looking at me like, well, why? And now no one is asking that question, but people are saying, how can we strengthen defense? How can we strengthen security? Because people realize it's the basic for everything that we're doing in the European Union, that we're safe. And also, how can we ensure to continue supporting Ukraine for them to win the war? So, you've seen there are quite a lot of challenges we identified, a lot of things we're working on giving liberal answers to, and I would very quickly like to give the floor to some of our representatives. We have those 3 working groups, and we have amazing chairs with us that are steering the work, and I think we would start with Svenja. maybe grab a microphone, join me here. Stientje van Eindhoven is working with us on the first topic, and I think Stientje is going to give us a little bit more insight about what they're doing there.
Thank you so much, Svenja, and great to have you all here. Really crucial that we set the boundaries for this manifesto together and that we do it right. If you think about the three big challenges that the world is facing at this moment, climate change, the biggest distinction wave in biodiversity since the extinction of the dinosaurs, and then widespread solution, think about the plastic soup, but also think about things like PFAS and those chemicals that are everywhere in our very food. It's very clear that we need to change something. And then you see there's different political answers to this challenge. Some will go stifling, some will go conservative, trying to stick their head in the sand and try to not change things. And I think we as liberals, we have the opportunity to provide a solution that creates that visibility of the opportunity to create a different world. We created this world, there is a path forward, and I think we can show that through innovation, through creating the right incentives, through changing incentives that will change the effect that we have on the world now and for future generations, there is an answer to also the concerns of citizens now in the field of climate, energy, biodiversity, agriculture. It's no time for standstill. This really is about Europe ensuring that in the future it stands strong and therefore we need to move. In the manifesto, you will see a number of topics where a change is needed. A change is needed, continues to be needed in climate and energy. We have to make sure that we push for that reform of energy while ensuring that we change the incentives so that people can continue to pay their energy bills. And especially in agriculture and the link to biodiversity, we cannot afford ourselves another 7 years of standstill. And if we don't change the common agricultural policy, if we do not know how to change the incentives in this field, ensuring that it's good for people, good for nature, and good for climate, I don't think we're doing what we should be doing. We should be providing the alternative with an optimistic view that the world can be a better place and that we can start doing that from Europe. The link to block number 3, of course, is very evident. Whatever we do in Europe, we have to make sure that we also try to create that space for our companies to take those decisions, to drive through that innovation, and for that trade policy is absolutely vital. Trade policy needs to be about sustainable trade, about sustainable development also elsewhere in the world, but the chair of block number 3 will certainly speak about this. And Europe can in that sense be a motor for change also worldwide, while ensuring that there is a competitive environment for our own companies here. Of course, for all of this, we need a lot more. We need to harness digitalization and the development of skills to make sure that our workforce is resilient. And I'm happy to hand over to Joko to give a few insights on this.
Thank you, Svenja. Thank you, Stientje. And hello to everyone. I'm Joko Alender from the Reform Party in Estonia, and I'm co-chairing the first group together with Stientje. So first of all, what I'd like to really stress is that the green transition is actually an economic development policy. So we are really looking at sustainability, the green transition and economy together. So what I would like to stress is for you to think about it in your parties, discuss with your people what are the hinders that you cannot tackle on a national level. Which are the decisions to help us forward in a green way that we need to solve on the European level? We need to really get these points from each one of you. So we are still in this stage where we really want your input. Couple of words about what we have been talking about. Definitely the labor force question is a problem for all of us. We really need to find the skilled people. We need to make the skills of tomorrow's labor market actually, because it's a forward-looking policy. We need to find the talents. We need to also find the labor force that we all are lacking in some specific fields. So these are the issues: how to join, how to make the green transition a policy that will actually give people good jobs, high-paying, qualified jobs, and how to do this actually with less resources, doing it in a circular way. So please do think about these issues. Come and talk to us, talk with your people, and together we will make Europe a greener place. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Joko, and thank you very much, Stientje. You've seen our two rock stars that were working on driving the economy and combating climate change. And we actually have with us Dan Barna first. He is the co-chair of the Working Group 2. Dan, if you can share a bit with us what you're working for fighting the corruption and working for rule of law.
Hello. This topic is the one where the issue is almost without question. The question and the challenge in the meetings we have was how much should we put in order to maintain that idea that the rule of law and the fight against corruption, even it's not constantly on the agenda because of the economic crisis and the COVID and all the other crises, the energetic one. This rule of law issue is a pillar, and how should we express it as an active measure, as liberal measures for the states and for our liberal party. So we had the discussion with civil society experts, with lawyers from our member parties, and I think we are on the right path to define an issue where these elements are critical and could be emphasized in the campaign, because as I mentioned also in my presentation in the morning, the objective is to define our lines as credible predicates for the electorate. Because in this moment when the extremist is putting a lot of pressure to the simple citizens, because always during the crisis the citizens get stressed, get fears, get unsafe feelings, and the populists and extremists are using these fears. And the idea to define the right predicates in order to put our elements as good lines for the campaign is the element where we are now in the discussion.
Thank you very much, Dan, for sharing that with us. And we have one more steering member here. It's Henrik Mortensen. You know him as a vice president of the ALDE Party, but he's also going to share some more insights with us. Henrik.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to share some of our thoughts with you this morning. But obviously, it's more important to listen to the input we can get from you for the further work. Now, the issue we are dealing with in my working group is, you could say, world affairs. And I could just as well start by mentioning the elephant, or should I say the panda in the room, China. Because China really has made this agenda a moving target, I could almost say, or at least a changing agenda almost from day to day, from month to month, and so on. So I think one of the main tasks for us is to find a way of how we should deal with China. We used to think, when we started out our discussion, we were talking about, oh, it's going to be a new world, it's going to be a multipolar world. Then we changed into talking about a messy polar world because it was very undefinable. But I think as we've been working, we are seeing more and more a return to a bipolar world. And we have to find our feet in this discussion, where to put our feet and how we should define the role of European and particularly liberal Europeans. So that's a very interesting and challenging aspect. I think we can still use the model which we've been using for some time now to deal with China in 3 categories. One category is China as a partner. Unfortunately, that's a category which is shrinking. China as a competitor in the world markets, it's probably also shrinking because we have to think of strategic autonomy in a limited number of areas where we should not confuse strategic autonomy with protectionism. And thirdly, of course, China is a systemic rival. So, and exactly that role makes the view more bipolar than what we thought. Now, could I just mention a few areas which I find extremely important is how to deal with the security division of labor between the EU and NATO. I think some of us have had to revise our views on this area as well. To be frank, I think we have found out that NATO is much more indispensable than we thought. A special challenge, which is extremely important, is the relation between Europe and Africa. We are seeing China making huge progress in their influence in Africa. The Belt and Road Initiative which you cannot really say is offensive, but it's a challenge to Europe. We must supply other avenues to the Africans than the Chinese. Of course, we should help with building infrastructure, but we should also build a development policy building on the empowerment of the individual. I mean, we are liberals, so what we want to do is to strengthen the liberal, and through that we may help, I hope, to build liberal societies also in Africa. And could I then end by Ukraine? I'm not going to say much about the war, but we are all very much set upon getting Ukraine as a member of the EU as quickly as possible. However, we should not forget that we have other friends which should also be included in EU as quickly as possible. So on top of Ukraine, that would be Moldova and Georgia, but also the old candidate countries on the Balkans, which we should also find a way into Europe for in the near future. I mean, this is an open window which we must utilize before it's shut again. And we have to be able to find ways of dealing with the practical legal issues which are obstacles for membership for these countries now.
Thank you very much, Henrik, for sharing a bit insight of the discussion in the working group. And last but certainly not least, I would like to invite Danaria Sukuri on the stage. Danaria is the president of our youth organization, LIMEC, and he is ensuring to have the youth perspective in all of our topics. Danaria.
Thank you so much, Svenja. Well, I can say that we in LIMEC, in our youth organization, we have noticed certain things regarding Europe's development. We have noticed that for first time in many, many years, we have Europeans that have problems with paying their bills, have problems finding jobs, have problems, making their everyday life work. We notice also that we have many citizens that have less prosperous vision of their future, less belief in a positive change, and also, in general, living in harsher times. And we know that when people's lives are harsher, we also know that the political climate gets harsher. And it's very exploited by those forces who wants to capitalize on the crisis to offer very simple solutions, to offer ideas that we as liberals don't stand behind. And for us as young liberals, it's important. I heard my colleagues talking about we need to work for change. We need to implement the changes. That is very important. But it's also important to communicate to the citizens what we want to do, how those changes are going to be like. Because I know in this room, we liberals, we like to have big discussions, intellectual, long debates on how we want to change. But it's important and crucial for us in LIMEC that when we are gathering here, our ideas are very simple and can be seen and understood by citizens. And this is our role with the manifesto, because we truly believe if we liberals, all of you in this room who believe in a prosperous Europe, who believe in the future of a strong Europe, if we don't take this process, if we don't lead this, then who do we leave this to? Do we leave this to the conservatives who each day are steering away from the values we could at least agree on? Do we go to the socialists, which frankly, I don't know where they stand for today?
Good question.
No, of course, we have to be in the front seat. But in order to be in the front seat, we need to offer the solution, we need to communicate what we want to do, and we also need to offer our citizens, our continent, and also countries close to our union solutions on how we're going to be stronger. And this is our role: communication, clarity, and of course, a vision for a prosperous future. So that's what we're going to work on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danaria, for this passionate speech. And, well, you've seen some of our members of the steering committee. They're the ones in the leading roles in steering the work of the working groups that we presented to you. We have many more brilliant people with us, but now we actually want to hear with you. And I again apologize that the time is short. The meeting before was running over, and we have to leave the stage soon for the opening. But, this is actually now time for you to bring questions. And you might be surprised, we actually are welcoming if you give a statement in a Q&A session, because we actually want to hear from you. But make it as short and sweet as possible, and take the microphone here or there, but I think there are more people there. So just line up and shoot at us.
Is it on? Yes.
It is on.
So thank you very much for this session. I will need to say though that this session was called Open Consultation Session, and there's 5 minutes for open consultation. So I hope we will have more moments where we can give input.
I can assure you will, and I again apologize. It's because the session before, because there were so many questions to the candidate that ran over, but we will ensure there will be more feedback for all the membership.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. So my name is Leonard, I'm from D66. Just a lot of thanks to the Manifesto Committee that has worked on this. Maybe a few very quick points. On the overall narrative, I think it could be more positive. We could really underline the achievements and that we can be proud of what the European Union has achieved as well. It's a lot about threats. Then about the first theme, I think from our side we would like to see it a bit more people-centered. It's not about only, it says measures for businesses, measures for the agricultural sector, measures for the energy sector. No, they are measures for people, a people-centered approach in which businesses are allies and other actors are allies. So I think that is something we would like to see stronger in that first theme, to go beyond the sort of narrow GDP-based or growth-based, but we would really like to have a people-centered approach. Then on the second theme, on internal affairs, rule of law, I think it says using the existing rule of law mechanism. I think it should be very clear that this means no money for autocrats breaching our values. I think the broad range of values, including fundamental rights, could be clearer here. However, it is important also to fight corruption, obviously. And then maybe one point on the asylum text. It says measures to better coordinate in the Mediterranean. We are always for coordination, but this cannot in any case mean criminalization or obstruction of search and rescue and NGOs in that field. And then on the third theme, I would just like to mention that for us it's very important that we work towards that defense union and that we do away with all vetoes in this area of decision making. So thank you very much. I hope these points can be taken into account and that we have a further moment to reflect. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing, and be assured we're taking notes of all your comments here today. But I can also share, you touched upon nothing that we haven't discussed, so I think we're in a good direction. I think you're going to like that in the end. Sven.
I was listening carefully to the topic number 3, and maybe the chair of the work group, I'm not sure whether he's available. You were talking on resilience and meant mostly IT infrastructure. And I guess what is missing is the rest of the infrastructure that is as vulnerable as others in regard to sabotage, in regard to strengthening interchange of, for example, energy supply. There's tons of things that go beyond the IT infrastructure that I think should be covered in this as well. So I'd like to suggest that topic to be somehow involved in that area as well.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. I think it's muted. Rudy, you should actually please get in line, be so kind. There are people already lining up.
Yeah, thank you, Alexander from Radikale Venstre, and thank you so much for your tremendous work. I must say, when I first read the outline, I was a bit afraid because climate change was mentioned one, maybe twice in what you forwarded to us. Hearing you talk today, my fears are eased a bit because it's clearly on your radar. I hope that when you say that it's no time for inaction, that we could get that into paper, that when the IPCC states that Europe needs to push forward its climate neutrality goal to 2040, ALDE is the party that's willing to take up that challenge and show a way forward, that it's simply not enough just to use the tools that we have already made available, but we need to propose new tools in order to make the climate change necessary. So I hope we can get that into, and that climate change also can be stated as the overshadowing problem all Europeans are facing, but also the overshadowing opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexander. And I can reassure you that is exactly why we put it as a first topic, because it's the underlying issue. Hema.
Yeah, hello, Hammer from the FDP in Germany. So thank you very much for the work. I like the narrative, and I want to keep it short to one point. And my point is, I like that you brought up today the point of upskilling and reskilling people, because that's what we're here for empowering and embracing people. And yesterday we talked about that Europe is a product. But a lot of people, I feel, still don't feel that they buy this product. They benefit indirectly from free trade, from our European Union and strength, but they don't experience any European life. And that's because like 30 to 40% of people in Europe still don't speak another language besides their mother tongue. And so that's something we have to address to make them really available and to open the doors to Europe for them. And that's why for me it would be very important that we address bilingual education, not only in secondary but already in primary or even in kindergarten. Because this is really important, so Europe is something for everybody and not just for those who are really well educated.
Great idea. Thank you very much for sharing. Rudy, maybe take the microphone.
Yes, Rudy from Germany for short. Concerning the trade, I would prefer the term free and fair trade as we use it in Liberal International. I was missing the word fair. Free and fair trade.
Thank you very much.
Then I'm also missing a little bit a point on the enlargement. Accelerated enlargement is a very important point. We should read it.
Thank you very much. I think you're preaching to the choir here. Everyone is with you on that. So, are you coming to take the floor? Oh, no. Okay. You're just leaving. Okay. See you in a bit. Well. As you see, our time is coming up. I again apologize that the time was very short, but it seems it was just matching the amount of questions we had, but don't you worry. You can at any stage still engage. Feel free also to send your emails. You can also join the town hall meetings that we're doing. It's not just for non-party members, you know. And we're going to have, as you saw in the timeline, a consultation process again, where the draft is going to be sent to the member parties. So through your member parties, you again have the opportunity to get engaged, because our brilliant drafting committee, and you saw some of them, I'm so grateful to be working with such an amazing team. They're the ones bringing their ideas together, but it's our party as a whole writing it, because it's our shared umbrella with which we're going together in the elections and going stronger into the next European Parliament as liberals to help shape the future of the European Union in a liberal way. My name is Svenja Hahn. Thank you very much for joining our sessions, and I'm leaving the stage now, and please stay here because the Congress opening is starting soon. Thank you very much.